My name is Karen. I'm 30 years old, married for 2 years, and work as an office worker. My husband, Robert, is 5 years older and works for a major corporation. Robert has always lived in the neighborhood, and me being an only child, he was like my big brother to me. But once we started working, we moved away from our hometown and lost touch. We ran into each other at a local festival 3 years ago and got in touch again. Soon, we realized we had developed feelings for each other and started dating. We got married shortly after that, and our parents were delighted. However, soon after our marriage, Robert's company went bankrupt and he became unemployed. I supported us financially during that time, and Robert worked hard to find a job. After about 6 months, he finally secured a position in the current company, so we breathed a sigh of relief. Not only that, but Robert has shown remarkable growth at his new workplace and is now being considered for a promotion. Things were going well until Robert started turning outright arrogant. I don't know how much he makes because he hands me cash for living expenses, but he seems to be earning a decent amount. He has begun to flaunt his wealth, collecting expensive watches that he doesn't even wear, and going on so-called business trips. Robert usually comes home late, so it's a given that he doesn't do his share of housework. If I point out what he hasn't done, he tries to solve it with money.
Did you clean up? Oh, I forgot. But you're home more, so just do it without complaining. I can give you extra pocket money if you want.
I don't like his attitude, and it often leads to fights. What do you mean pocket money? That's not the point. Then Robert always leaves the house or locks himself in his room, making it impossible to have a conversation. I have no proof, but I suspect he's having an affair. Our standard of living has clearly gotten better. We've moved from an old apartment to a nice condominium. But despite these material comforts, I've only been feeling less happy. One day, while I was at work, I received a phone call.
Your mother collapsed!
It was my father on the line. I rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. My mother had a chronic illness that worsened, and she had collapsed at home. By the time my father came home, it was already too late. In deep sorrow, I started preparing for my mother's funeral with my father. I called Robert multiple times, but he didn't answer. He finally called back around the usual time he gets home. I picked up the call from Robert.
Karen, why aren't you home? You called me several times during work. What's going on?
Robert, arriving home, finally realizes that I'm not there and calls me.
I'm sorry, Robert, my mom, she passed away.
I tell him, holding back tears. But the response I get is unimaginably harsh.
What? She passed away? Don't call me for something like that. Such a nuisance.
I was stunned by his words and couldn't hold back my tears anymore. Is that all it is to you? My mother's death, is that all it is? I can't believe it. I have to prepare for the funeral, so I'm staying at my parents' house tonight. The wake is tomorrow and the funeral is the day after, so I'll be waiting here. I'm sad and frustrated. My emotions are all over the place, but somehow I managed to relay the necessary information.
You're not coming back? What about my dinner? If you're not going to be home, just say so. Fine, I'll go out for drinks or something.
Robert's words just passed right through me. What time can you make it tomorrow? I managed to squeeze out those words.
Tomorrow? Tomorrow's gonna be tough. I have an important business meeting. The day after is not gonna work either.
But that's a problem. You can take a leave of absence due to family loss, right? For as long as you can get here sometime after lunch tomorrow, it will be fine, so... It's unbelievable that he won't come to the funeral when his wife's mother has passed away. Despite my plea, Robert dismisses it with a single word. Busy. It got to my limit, and I snapped at him. My mother just passed away. She took care of you since you were young. You should come and say your final goodbye. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, and she would often help Robert's parents, who both worked, by providing meals. We've known each other as families for a long time, and yet he doesn't even feel the need to come to the funeral? Maybe because I yelled, Robert said,
Fine, I got it. I'll be there tomorrow,
and hung up in an annoyed tone. The next day, many people gathered for the wake. Of course, Robert's parents were there too. Karen, isn't Robert here yet? His mother asks, and I realize that Robert hasn't arrived yet. I was busy with preparations and thought he had already arrived. The wake is about to start. When I call Robert, he surprisingly picks up right away. Robert, are you still at work? What time do you think you can get here? Then he grumbled in a foul mood.
I'm still working. I can't go today.
As he yelled. There's no point in talking to him anymore. I gave up for the day, told him the time of the funeral tomorrow, and hung up the phone. Robert's parents apologized profusely to my father and me, and had called Robert numerous times, but their calls never went through. I believed he would at least come to the funeral, but Robert did not show up the next day either. To make matters worse, when I called him, he said,
"I earn a great hourly wage. I could go, but can you afford it?"
I had had enough. I no longer care about him. It was all about money again. No matter how much money one has, or how good a life one leads, I can't stand to be with a person who has no morals. I decided to get a divorce. Amid all this, at the funeral, a woman approached me. "You're Karen, right? I'm a classmate of your mother, and we just had tea recently." She told me through her tears, and I inadvertently shed tears too. The woman continued to ask, "Where is your husband?" When I responded that he was busy with work and couldn't make it, the woman began to quietly rage. "He can't come because of work. That can't be true." I was confused because I didn't understand what she meant, but she noticed and explained to me. "I'm an executive at Robert's company. I heard there was a brilliant guy who had just joined, but when I hear the story, I realized it was your husband, Karen. But he seems to have started slacking off at work recently, and apparently there were complaints from clients just yesterday too." I was surprised to hear this, but perhaps the reason he yelled when I called him yesterday was because he was in a bad mood due to that complaint. I wanted to know more about it, but the lady, being considerate, left without delving deeper into the conversation. That night, I once went back home and packed all the essentials. Robert was not home yet and didn't answer his phone either. I left a note saying I'd be going to my parents' house for a while and left the house. The next day, I got a message from the executive woman. It seemed that Robert had submitted his leave of absence and was off again that day. But when I told her that he had not shown up for the funeral after all, she muttered, "I figured," and told me everything. At last she said, "I think he will be fired on the spot. The next time he comes to the office, his seat will probably be gone." The call from Robert came the following night.
"When are you coming back?"
He sounded grumpy, but I wasn't afraid. I had no feelings left for this man anymore. "I'll be picking up my things soon."
"Huh?"
"I won't be coming back."
"What are you talking about?"
Robert responded in a ridiculing tone. "Let's get a divorce." When I firmly said so, Robert laughed derisively.
"Divorce? Why are we suddenly talking about that?"
"I can't live with a man who doesn't even attend his wife's mother's funeral. That's beyond wrong."
"Oh, right. Do whatever you want. You're the one who's going to struggle without me around, Karen."
"I'll come by tomorrow, Saturday. I'll be picking up my things and bringing the divorce papers. Be home, okay?" I had everything prepared and was ready for anything. The next day, I headed home with the divorce papers. When I opened the door, Robert was sleeping on the couch. Empty beer cans were scattered on the table. Then I felt something was off. As I glanced towards the bathroom, a woman came out. "Huh?" When I inadvertently mumbled, the woman noticed me and gasped. At her voice, Robert jolted awake.
What the hell are you doing here?"
Robert stuttered, gaping at me. "I told you I'd be coming to pick up my stuff today, right? With the divorce papers?" The woman who came out of the bathroom stood still for a while, but seemingly understanding of the situation, she slipped out the front door. Well, I know who she is and where she's from. It doesn't matter that she's not here now. Then Robert, all flustered, began to make excuses like,
"That's not what it looks like. She works under me, and she came over for some drinks last night."
I didn't lend an ear to what he was saying. "I don't care about that right now. This is our property division agreement, and these are the divorce papers. I don't want to drag this out, so please go over and sign them quickly." Then, as Robert skimmed through the property division document, a smug expression spread across his face.
"Property division, huh? Well, I suppose there's no help for it. You're gonna need money to live on your own from now on. Fine, I'll give you this much."
With that, he filled in the divorce papers and handed them to me.
"We're strangers now, huh?"
I was so disgusted by his smug face that I grabbed the divorce papers and walked out the front door. Later, I submitted the divorce papers to the city hall, and we were officially strangers to each other. Yet, a few days later, Robert visited my parents' home.
"Karen, what the hell is this?"
Oh, it arrived, didn't it? What Robert had in his hand was a bill for alimony. It was something I had claimed through my lawyer.
"Damages? What's that about?"
It says right there. It's for the emotional distress you caused me with harassment and infidelity. Robert had been leaving all the household chores to me and had also verbally abused me. Having fallen into a poor mental state, I had been using my phone's voice recorder to record my daily exchanges with Robert so I could process my situation later. I hadn't thought it would come in handy, but when I played it for my lawyer, he said it was straight up verbal abuse, and I could file a lawsuit against it. And then there were the damages for infidelity. Robert, you've been coming home late recently, and I thought you were acting strange. You've been cheating, right? I really believed you wouldn't do something like that, Robert. When I said this calmly, Robert snapped back.
No, that's not true. I haven't cheated. You're talking about that woman the other day, right? We all went drinking and she ended up at my place because she missed the last train. There's nothing between us. You got it wrong.
Robert denied it persistently. Why do you think I overlooked that woman running away that time? Because I had other evidence. Yes, I am aware that she works under you. You shouldn't have taken any leave of absence just to go on a trip with her. Did you really think you wouldn't get caught? And you've been fired from your job now, haven't you? I do know everything, you know. At that, Robert looked at me with wide eyes. I continued laughing. You always bragged about being on the fast track. I suppose you couldn't admit you'd been fired, could you? I heard you both got fired. Just because your mistress is in the finance department, you can't embezzle your company's money and not get caught.
How do you?
He probably had thought I wouldn't find out. Robert looked pale and was opening and closing his mouth. One of the people who attended my mother's funeral was an executive from your company. She said she was a classmate of my mother's. She was very angry that you didn't attend the funeral and thought she would give you a good talking to when you returned to the company. But then she realized you were on leave, so she contacted me. Your overnight trip at a tropical resort must have been a blast, huh? With that, I thrust the evidence photos I'd been keeping at him.
Hey, this is...
Robert was visibly paled. Detectives are amazing, aren't they? I never thought they could gather so much evidence. When I received a call from the female executive, my gut feeling was triggered. When I left a note saying I'd be gone for a while, Robert must have assumed he was free to go somewhere. If my gut feeling was right, he was cheating. When I consulted with the female executive, she referred me to a lawyer and a detective. I'd heard that detective services were expensive, but I was certain something would come up in a few days. If so, I could hire them for just that day, and if I can claim damages for his infidelity, it would offset the cost of hiring a detective. I decided to hire them with that in mind. On the day of the farewell ceremony, Robert came home and found out that I won't be coming back. He then left for a trip with his lover on the next day. Enjoy your little affair vacation, not knowing a detective is tailing you or that you've been fired? Must have been a surprise to return to work and find your seat gone, right? Finally, Robert opened his mouth.
So, it was all your fault.
I couldn't help but laugh hearing that. What did I do? You were the one misusing your leave and embezzling your company's funds, weren't you? I straight up told him. Just because you're jobless now doesn't mean you can avoid paying me alimony. We'll also have property division, and you should be able to pay it all by selling off your unnecessary watch collection. I want my money, and I want it now. With that, I slammed the front door. When the female executive called me, she said I thought so, because she noticed a suspicious movement of their company's funds. The one in charge of accounting, my husband's lover, was suspected. And because she had heard rumors about Robert having an affair with her, she looked into it thoroughly on the same day, and sure enough, they were carrying out an embezzlement. That's probably how they were financing their affair. Both were fired on the spot, it seems. Later, Robert transferred the entire amount of damages at once. I have no idea what he's doing or where he is now. I haven't heard anything, and frankly, I don't care. Despite everything, I am grateful for this outcome. If it weren't for this, I would have never considered breaking up with Robert and would have continued to suffer. Maybe this was the final lesson my mother wanted to teach me. I'm all fine now. I'm living well now, so I can take care of my father.